Mtshali. We understand now that the cortege has arrived at the cemetery where Mtshali will be laid to rest. Our reporter Sibongakonke Mbatha is at the cemetery and she joins us now. Sibonga, what is happening there?
A very good afternoon. Like you've just said, we have reached the third part of the program, as we had witnessed earlier on, where the second part of the program and various speakers and dignitaries were all in unison agreeing that who has fallen, Eric Mtshali, was not just a trade unionist, a communist, but beyond that, a revolutionary leader. And of course, as we speak, we are coming to you live from the Heroes Acre Cemetery in Chesterville, which is just a few minutes from the stadium where the official proceedings were happening. And of course, that alone signatures as to the caliber of leadership he had, and of course, this being his final resting place. This particular cemetery carries a lot of history in Durban, as we will recall that various people who have had different stances in different media industries are laid to rest here. We will recall Nat Nakasa, a freedom writer and journalist. His remains were buried here in 2014, and we will recall Senzo Meyiwa, we'll recall Sfiso Ncwane, the gospel icon. So many great people have been buried here. But just to briefly talk about what's happening now behind me, there's a lot that is happening. You can see the military wing is coming in as the cortege gets closer to where the giant which has fallen will finally be laid to rest. But just to have a quick chat as to the significance of him being buried here at Heroes Acre Cemetery. I have with me Nkosi Ngcobo, who is the head of eThekwini Parks and Recreation. Mapoloba, this is a significant time. A giant has fallen. He's being laid to rest amongst many.
Oh, this was a great man indeed. I was fortunate enough to meet him in life and see him in action, either in a public platform, in a small meeting, or one-on-one. So there could not have been any other more appropriate place than here, where we're going to be interring his remains. If we're to understand the place that we are, it's more than a cemetery. This is about a memory bank of our struggles. It is a place that keeps a lot of history of how actually black people, in the thick of things before 1994, they gallantly fought against the oppression of the time, and even through the transitions for that matter. So people that are here are people that fought when this township, Chesterville, was declared to be only a black township. They were moved about a kilometer or two away from here, Katomena, where it was a place which was non-racial, and this township and others like Wamash were established. And then people fought against that, and many of them were died, and then they are buried here. I can talk, for instance, of a young woman at the time that was Portia. Portia lies behind us here. She was a member of Umkhonto wesizwe working from Swaziland. She was abducted and then killed, buried in somewhere in a farm, and then her remains after 1994 were then moved to here. Then we also have Sihle Mbonga. His speciality was to organize student doctors, and they recruited them into MK. They had a unit that was responsible for the bombing of some of the apartheid in their own symbols that were around the city of eThekwini. So he is also here. Then you have, as you said, Nat Nakasa, the greatest writer, somebody who left this country without a passport, was in the US, not officially. Really, he is called a man that belonged to no other state. And eventually, when he came to sleep here at the end of the day, he then was able to regain his citizenship. He now belongs here. So this place, therefore, is very rich. And we as a city, we have always argued that since it is more than a cemetery, we want to turn it, and we're in that process now, into an open-air museum where people will come and really learn through the individuals that are here about our struggles from the beginning, when there was black on black violence, the so-called, and also after the liberation struggle. So that is where our is. That is where our history is, and therefore Ubaba Mtshali really deserves to be here, as most of the time a teacher of these young people that are here in this cemetery.
Speaking of learning and opening up the cemetery for learning, especially for young people, we must also highlight that it's not just politicians. Can you just take me through that it's not just only politicians that are laid to rest here? We see musicians, we see soccer representatives also being laid to rest. So the variety of people being laid to rest here, so it means that people who get to be laid to rest here are not only just people with a political background.
Oh yes, indeed. You see, our liberation struggle was not fought only in one front, but in many other fronts. Like, for instance, your arts and culture. And that is why here you have the national captain of our Bafana team, Senzo Mayiwa. And we always argue that it was not really about how he died, but the role that he played during his heydays as a skipper for Orlando Pirates, and also more importantly for Bafana. As we also said, we have so many other cultural writers and also cultural activists that are here. So our struggle therefore is represented here, and it talks about the totality of the entire society, because as we said, it's not just only politics, but there are so many other things. Even your teachers that are here, the educators who were involved in various forms, various platforms in our struggle, they are also here.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Poloba. As we can see behind us, the cortege is coming closer. They're going to bring uMagalela much closer to where his final resting bed will be. Do you perhaps have an idea in terms of the process? The South African National Defence Force is of course in charge of this leg of the program, but do you have an idea in terms of how everything happens, the removal of the South African flag?
Oh yes, we will come to a very solemn part of the program for me, which is always touching, because one of the things that we don't understand as South Africans, which I think we still have to try as much as we can to understand it, is our national symbols. Here there is no other honor that you can have from the South African state, a democratic one, than to have your coffin being wrapped in the national flag. So what we are going to see here is that the official pallbearers are going to be taking him to his final resting place, and then the authorities from the SANDF side will then remove this national symbol and hand it over to the family. And then this raises a question as to why is it not buried together with the coffin. In terms of our processes, procedures, what is being allowed and not allowed, you cannot do that. The national flag has to be treated in a manner that is prescribed by the state heraldry, and those prescriptions would include that it can't be taken down with the coffin, and therefore we're going to have a ceremony now where it's going to be removed and then handed over to the family, and that shows the stature of a person that were coming to lay to rest, an internationalist, but somebody who never forgot that he had a country. But also, most importantly, his conduct even after 1994 was very exemplary, especially to those of us who knew him. He was not a man that was caught up in consumption, but he continued even at his old age, or no matter he was not well, to still work and put together young people, especially in Claremont. I know he has a library there with a lot of books. People who just move in and out to get his books there. So therefore, this man, as we said, really deserves what we're going to be seeing just now. Thanks a lot to you.
That was, of course, head of eThekwini Parks and Recreation, Mr. Themkosi Ngcobo, taking us through the process as to what is going to be happening just now behind me. Like I had mentioned earlier on, that the cortege is slowly getting closer to where uMagalela will finally be laid to rest. As you can see, the preparations alongside his grave site have been finished. All that is expected to happen now is the entire cortege to continue getting closer with his coffin to be laid to rest. Of course, the area of Claremont and Chesterville are familiar grounds to the fallen giant, as we'll recall that he was indeed born in Claremont. So young people from Claremont and young people all over the country did express their condolences to the family throughout the week. We also witnessed many of them coming forward, as well as members of the Young Communist League, especially during his memorial service, expressing their loss, because we will remember that uMagalela was very passionate about young people, very passionate about education, believing that education, it is indeed the only way they can emancipate African children, especially for the future. We will recall as well that in 2014, a school was named after this fallen giant, Eric Stalin Mtshali Secondary School, which is located not so far from this settlement in Waybank, which also reflects his dedication to young people as well as education. As we continue to give you visuals from the gravesite where uMagalela will be laid to rest, a giant, an icon, a communist, a trade unionist who has been hailed as a revolutionary leader. We will review that earlier on during the process at the stadium. Different dignitaries bear testimony of his leadership qualities, which they have highlighted as one that is worth emulating. It's back to studio.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Sibonga. That was our colleague Sibongakonke Mbatha giving us an update at the funeral of Eric Mtshali at Chesterville Cemetery.